That's an Iron Horse, probably off of a washing machine. I got it from, oh, let's see, John Saunders, 40 years ago. That's a little Clinton with the exhaust on the back side of the block. Carburetor quite similar to the early 5S and 6S Briggs, but not the same. 1949 twin-cylinder Maytag with the big air mixer that has a scouring pad looking air filter inside of it, and the small mag, so it's kind of an oddball. The one-cylinder Briggs is the 36. It's nothing special. I've got a homemade points cover. Didn't have the proper one, so I whipped something up out of galvanized tin. FI Briggs with overhead valves that I took valves out of a 6S Briggs and cut them down shorter and machined the grooves for the keepers into the valve stem by putting the valve stem in a drill and taking the edge of a file and put the drill in a rag in the vise and basically made my own lathe to cut the grooves for the keepers. And I put replacement valve stem bushings in it because they were worn bad enough you could stick a toothpick in beside the valve in the guide. They were terribly sloppy from sitting outside with water running down in them. And there's a couple Sterling homemade motors. I saw them on a YouTube video. Couldn't stand it, had to build one, and built a second one. And a little WMB Briggs, a Rio with the cable recoil, half speed on the output because it runs off the cam, which explains why the recoil looks like the rope's going in the wrong way. The motor turned backward to the cam, of course. What else we got? Way down there is a Briggs with a little cast iron intake, similar to what I ride on my red motorbike all the time, but not the same. And there's a little 5S, all cleaned up and drained, and a thin film of oil put in the gas tank, so it's preserved and put away. The bigger of the little carburetors that used the check valve remote tank. The littler ones had a straight up and down bolt pattern. This has the staggered pattern like a 5S in the deep oil pan. Clinton I made into a horizontal, but it was a vertical. You can see my base at the bottom. Got a video of it running real slow because I put a big slug of aluminum on the crankshaft for momentum. There's a little real type mower motor that was beautiful when I put it on the shelf, but it's been up there 40 years, 38 maybe, so it's got an excuse to be a little dirty. There's an article they did in the Courier Journal about my homemade motorbikes back in '88. There's a Continental with the points and the governor mechanism under that little cap. And I used a paint sample can for a gas tank, which of course is empty because of being down here in my basement. There's a Lawson. Had some pits in the shroud really bad when I got it, but back in the day I was a little more fanatical than I am now, and I did a pretty slick Bondo job smoothing out some pits and a couple holes about as big as a, about as big around as a gas line, no bigger than that. Big old Briggs, same deal. Pretty when I put it up there, but dust happens. 6S Briggs, rejuvenated here a couple years back. Well, more than a couple, 2019. Here's the Western Flyer that somebody hored up and painted the rims. They must have been rusty. Got a little crazy with the extra paint, but it's still a good bike, and I'd like to get a China kit someday if I can finagle around and trade something for a China kit. In other words, I don't want to shell out $100, but I'd like to put a China motor on it just so I'll be street legal for the first time. Homemade Springer, little old 20-inch all splayed out with a Mercury clutch. Comes in and grabs the belt. Another 20-inch that I made for Les Paul Deal, the son of Mick Mars. I worked with him for 20 years at Albert Oil Company. There's my old chopper looking bike with the Honda Hobbit rear wheel. That wheel's worth a couple nickels. I had an old buddy that used to say that. Bless his heart, he's long dead now. Got a Toyota heater motor running the headlight out off the end, so it runs all the time, whether the bike's moving or sitting still, and got a Ford 6-cylinder water pump pulley welded to an old clutch that had no teeth on it from being abused on a go-kart, and the kid was going to throw it away, and I took it and cut that snout off that water pump pulley and just welded the pulley alone to the clutch, and we're off to the races. I always take valve caps, not always, but I have taken valve caps, and that's one of them. The metal ones, or the steel ones, sweat them to the gas cap so that it doesn't do what that did before. That's an afterthought, in other words. You can see where it ate the paint off. And there's a Schwinn-built Louisville Cycle and Supply badge, just for looks. Cool little splayed out bike with AMF Roadmaster moped wheels. Real nice big heavy wheels. They're trustworthy. And a English Racer pedal crank assembly made into my jack shaft. Foot clutch that you can lock in place with your foot by tipping your foot forward. And it'll sit still and not try to pull, and you can have both feet on the ground. Then you tip your foot back like it is now, and the belt is tight. Took a little thinking, but not too much. I ain't capable of too much. The old Whizzer with the noisy motor, I'm going to sell it and a good motor if I can get $2,000 out of the bike and the extra motor both. But I don't need to sell it. I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but I'm doing all right these days. And there's a little homemade mini bike, basically, out of one of those scooters that had the bar that went down to the bottom down there. But I cut it off and welded it up to turned it upside down. All my old antique toys. I just got rid of an airplane that I got from Lowell Ray yesterday to a guy who's homebound and needs something to play with. Bunch more little old toys. A glow plug for a little airplane. Got seats, got new gas tank. Boxes and boxes and boxes of hoarded metal. It's cluttered, but I can still get around. I've got my pathways through here. Made that workbench 41 years ago. It's been used a couple times, I'd say. And I get on a kick, I'll have more than one of something. I've got a bunch of vices. One in here, one out on the ledge, one down by the shed, and one on this table over here. Because once I get started, I want to keep going at whatever it is I'm working on. There's the red one I ride almost every day. Got pretty good low end power, almost no top end though. People get fed up getting behind me, but They can go around. I'm a taxpayer. I can ride on the street if I want. There's the blue one. There, I just saw me for a second. There's me with my short hair. Got rid of my ponytail. Too damn much trouble. 70-year-old man with a ponytail. Who ever heard of such? And there's Old Faithful. Got my YouTube channel on my chain guard because I go in restaurants and I see people outside looking it over, and if I don't want to go outside and ham it up, they can check out my stuff on YouTube. And sometimes I just sit still and mind my business, but not very often. I'm pretty much of a show off. And what do we got? Got a front wheel drive with a Greyhound or Jiangdong motor on it. Front wheel drive back here in the corner with a Jacobsen with those splayed out handlebars. That was a bad dude when it had 5 gears, but I put it in its lowest gear and took the derailleur off because it was an invitation to end up in the emergency room, which I've frequented quite often in my life. Once from a bicycle. My homemade phone fixture to put in my shirt or jacket when I'm out riding and want to film. Trying to think of what else we got down here. The tool you hope you never need, but I did here recently. And the workbench, the tool bench. This is one full ass shop, I'll tell you what. But I love it. I wouldn't trade it for a fancy one. For one, I'd hate to have to move. Well, we're fixing to go visit Barbie's dad at the nursing home, so I'm going to wrap this up. I'll eventually get it on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. I'm having a ball.